Good morning and welcome to the podcast. I'm here with my co-host Nate.
Hey.
Today we're taking a step from our regularly scheduled celebrity gossip news and diving into the Italian futurist movement of the early 20th century and how it eventually ties into avant-garde rock and orchestral scene of the 70s and 80s.
Our argument today is that Italian futurist Luigi Russolo's The Art of Noises inspired the avant-garde compositional techniques of Edgar Varese and his timbrally structured percussion ensemble Ionization, in turn inspiring the techniques of avant-rocker Frank Zappa and his live performances and orchestral works, specifically naval aviation and art. Russolo's impact is furthermore apparent in Varese and Zappa's utilization of emerging technology as a tool to expand the library of sounds available to them, such as in Varese's Poème électronique and Zappa's Aerobics in Bondage. Detailed analyses of these pieces will demonstrate the progressive inspiration linking Russolo's writings to Varese and in turn Zappa.
So what even is Italian futurism and who are these guys?
Around the turn of the 20th century, a group of artists called futurists began embracing the modern technologies of the time and incorporating them into large-scale propagandic multimedia demonstrations intended to shock and awe. One of these futurists, a painter named Luigi Russolo, believed his complete lack of musical experience left him best suited to initiate its evolution. Russolo's manifesto, The Art of Noises, argued that the highly industrialized sounds of daily life left audiences bored with stylistically typical compositions. In the years that followed, Russolo experimented heavily with creating an orchestra of intona rumori, or noise instruments, that imitated the sounds of automobiles, electric motors, machine guns, and other noise sounds in an extreme range of tones, dynamics, and amplification. This culminated in a years-long stretch of performances across Europe that sometimes provoked violent reactions, but ultimately impressed avant-garde composers like Edgar Varese. While the intona rumori were destroyed during World War II, Russolo had successfully created new sounds with a timbral range no orchestra could hope to match.
So, who was this Varese guy?
Edgar Varese was a prolific avant-garde composer throughout the 20th century. Raised in Italy, he received formal education in math and science, as well as compositional tutoring at conservatories in Paris. Despite this, Varese was determined to break the musical mold and develop an original compositional aesthetic. He used percussion as a tool for expanding his timbral palette and structured around it in his percussion opus, Ionization.
Okay, wait. Is this all going to be about percussion?
Not entirely. As we get into the 1940s and 50s, and technology allows for the electronification of sound, we'll analyze how Varese implemented that into his works like Poème électronique. Remember, Russolo was all about synthesizing exciting new technology in art, and that technology evolves over the course of Varese's career. In the 1920s and 30s, percussion was the best experimental medium for imitating the sounds of daily life.
Okay, I understand what Italian futurists wanted, and I understand Russolo's intentions with the art of noise, but Varese's music is highly respected now. Even if they both experienced backlash at the time, Russolo's Intona Rumori concerts are perceived more as an interesting thought experiment, not as enduringly influential work. What's the connection? Did he and Varese even know each other?
They absolutely knew each other. Varese experienced Russolo's noise instruments firsthand and considered him a personal friend. To your point, Varese dismissed Russolo's futurist experiments as unartistic and nothing more than mere noise.
Aha! I was right. No connection at all.
Did Debussy not denounce Wagner? Varese's own definition of music is organized sound. This is in no way antithetical to Russolo's beliefs. Varese even said, "When new instruments will allow me to write music as I conceive it, the movement of sound masses of shifting planes will be clearly perceived." Russolo's Intona Rumori were new instruments conceived in the pursuit of previously unheard sounds. Varese may have disapproved of Russolo's extremism, and he certainly didn't think the futurist approach was musical, but the idea of experimenting to create original sounds and combining timbres in exciting new ways remains consistent, albeit in a more organized, expressive fashion.
I'm not convinced. It's not like Varese ever composed with Russolo's Intona Rumori.
That is also true. However, Varese did apply an avant-garde approach to the instrumentation and structure of his 1931 percussion ensemble, Ionization. This exclusively percussive ensemble was written for 40 instruments. I'll go through them quickly. The first category is several unpitched instruments that still have varying tones, such as triangles, sleigh bells, snare drums, side drums, gongs, tam-tams, bass drums, Chinese blocks, and crash cymbals. Purely unpitched instruments, claves, maracas, güiro, castanets, and tambourine. Pitched instruments like glockenspiel, chimes, and piano. And lastly, representative instruments intended to create real-world sounds, like the lion's roar or string drum, anvils, whips, and what would become his signature sound, high and low sirens. While this collection can create no melodic or harmonic growth, the timbral toolkit is enormous. In-depth analyses of ionization done by Chu Wen Chung Varèse's longtime copyist and professional assistant, and by percussionist/composer Jean-Charles François, identify three distinct structures or patterns in the timbral qualities and their rhythmic backbone that are combined, altered, or overlapped to generate form. But we'll just analyze the first two. From François, structure 1, a slow rhythmic line shared between two opposite timbres and mixed with modulated sounds in the background. And structure 2, a polyphonic interaction of 2, 3, or more rhythmic lines of fast, sharp, articulated sounds ranging from very short to medium in duration of decay with an alteration of two opposite timbres.
Before we go any further, can I hear some examples of these so-called structures? I'm not sure I completely understand what you mean by that.
Great question. And yes, of course we can listen for ourselves. Let's hear the first minute or so of ionization. Hint. See if you can discern the exchange between structures 1 and 2. So, what did he think?
Okay, I heard structure 1 from the get-go. Varèse immediately opens with the siren, cymbal, and side drum rolls in the background, and the resonance of the forte bass drum against the higher pitched triangle. It seemed like an immediate transition to structure 2. The snare drum, bongos, and maracas all together with a sharp, wide, and medium articulation. The rhythm sped up there too, and it feels much more energetic. I think I heard the bass drum and cymbal playing just a little bit in the background, which seemed to maximally stretch the timbral range in both directions.
You've mentioned the instrumentation a little bit, but what larger patterns do you notice within these first two structures?
Well, with all those drums in the front, I guess I was expecting more unison notes, some hella clean beats or something. But it seems like there's always a mix of high and low sounds. The first roll is a low side drum and suspended cymbal. The crescendo in the structure 2 is a bass drum and triangle. It's very layered, very textured.
Exactly. Varèse isn't using counterpoint or harmonies to take us on a complex sonic journey. He's using the timbres of the percussion instruments. Varèse may have disagreed with Russolo's methods of liberating sound and composing for strictly noise, but there's no doubt they shared a similarly experimental method. Ionization's exclusive use of percussion instruments, especially the inaugural sirens and timbre, is a well-structured approach to Russolo's ideas. The absence of electronics in Varèse's music up to the 1950s was not for lack of effort. In 1916, Varèse was quoted by the New York Morning Telegraph. "Our musical alphabet must be enriched. We also need new instruments very badly. In my own works, I have always felt the need for new mediums of expression which can lend themselves to every expression of thought and can keep up with thought." His search for new instruments led him to the quickly developing electronic audio technology of the time. Throughout the 1920s and 40s, Varèse sought a tool for electronic composition from acoustical professionals, universities, and even Hollywood producers. He was continuously denied until anonymously acquiring a tape recorder, allowing him to at long last experiment with electronic compositions. Varèse's first year of electronic experimentation earned him a commission for an electronic tour de force on behalf of European record company Philips to be premiered at the 1958 Brussels World Fair. Philips provided a high-tech sound laboratory and funded the construction of a pavilion specifically designed to host his composition. The result was Poème électronique, Varèse's 8-minute omnidirectional electronic opus designed for 350 meticulously ordered speakers around Philips Pavilion. While the destruction of the pavilion immediately following the World's Fair has made it impossible to fully recreate the premiere, stereophonic recordings demonstrate Varèse's lasting commitment to explore any avenue of unique noises.
What kinds of sounds did Varèse use in this poem électronique?
Many of the sounds ironically adhere to the 6 families of noises of the Futurist orchestra that Russolo claimed in his 1913 manifesto would soon be mechanically realized. These families include 1. Roars, thunderings, explosions, hissing roars, bangs, and booms. 2. Whistling, hissing, puffing. 3. Whispers, murmurs, mumbling, muttering, gurgling. 4. Screeching, creaking, rustling, humming, crackling, rubbing. 5. Noises obtained by beating on metals, woods, skins, stones, pottery, etc. And 6. Voices of animals and people, shouts, screams, shrieks, wails, hoots, howls, death rattles, and sobs. Listen to this excerpt of Poème Electronique and see if you can hear some of the noises from these families.
Okay, some family 6 in there, some human voice. Maybe it's like a whale call or something. Listen. Whoa, okay, that's definitely some family 1 banging, booming action. It's a lot of, okay, yeah, there's some family 5 percussion sounds. More voices. Kind of sounds like family 2's mumbling or muttering. Okay. Oh, there's some wrestling in there. Could be family 4. Okay, wow. Alright, almost all of Russolo's predictions for the sounds of the Futurist Orchestra are present, even in the short clip. Perez may not have explicitly agreed with Russolo, but his compositions sure reflect a lot of his noise sounds. To say Perez was not in the least influenced by Russolo's radical ideologies would be a fool's errand.
I couldn't agree more. Do you think the impression of Russolo on Perez was passed on to anyone else?
Funny you asked that. In 1956, Perez got a phone call from a 15-year-old boy living in California. This boy was like totally fanboying over Perez, asking all these questions about his music, which I'm sure Perez was very happy to hear considering how controversial the music was at the time. Anyways, Perez was talking to this kid, telling him about some new music he's working on. But little did he know, he was talking to future Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Frank Zappa.
Whoa! Frank Zappa? Tell me more.
In his life, from 1940 to 1993, Zappa filled stadiums, topped charts, and released 62 self-produced albums in his lifetime. Along with his commercial success, Zappa was at the forefront of musical activism. Through his music, Zappa denounced censorship and went against the consumerist culture of the American recording and publication business.
All right, get to the important stuff already.
I'm getting there. Similar to Zappa, Perez was outspoken against the artistic and social structures surrounding music, refusing to be confined by the rules of what music should and should not be. This similarity in social ideologies translated perfect into their compositional techniques.
Nice transition, bro.
Thanks, bro. Zappa and Perez's compositions were never restricted by any set form. Instead, they began the music with an idea, like a particular rhythm or like a theme, and let the piece build from that as they saw fit, a method that Perez compared to the natural process of crystallization. Zappa didn't only do this in his orchestral work, he used this idea in all of his performances. Zappa and his band never played the song twice. In every performance, the Mothers of Invention, his band, would step on the stage not knowing what they were going to play. They would start with a song people knew, and in real time, Zappa would conduct the band, changing the tempo and key as he wanted, eventually creating the new composition while maintaining the familiar themes and lyrics from the songs people knew. Zappa saw his performances as decorating time, which he especially applied in his improvisational guitar solos. This whole process fits exactly with Perez's idea of crystallization, but in the context of a rock and roll concert.
Are there any more similarities?
I'm glad you asked. In Zappa's orchestral music, the way he organizes the sounds and growth of the music can be directly tied back to Perez. More specifically, in the piece Naval Aviation and Art by Zappa, there's no clear melody or harmony. The way he develops the piece is mostly through how the texture and timbre changes through the orchestration. This is very similar to Perez's approach to development and ionization. Naval Aviation and Art, specifically the version on the album Orchestral Favorites Live at Royce Hall, begins with a simple texture with only bass clarinet, flute, and solo violin. Take a listen. As you can hear, the flute and violin trade off in an articulated 30-second note run that leads into a long, sustained note. This motif is repeated throughout the entire piece. The solo violin is in the foreground, with the motif being repeated the entire time, exploring the entire range of the instrument. In the background, the texture of the orchestra swells in close, dissonant harmonies, while the bass and tuba trade droning notes that support the ensemble's growth. In addition to the orchestral swells, you hear brass instruments, trumpets and trombones emerge from the wall of sound before retreating back into the texture and seamlessly trading off with each other. Throughout, violins and woodwinds sporadically jump out of the sound, playing the fast 30-second note motifs on top of the brass. Hear the trading?
Yeah, and the layering, oh my!
The instruments each explore the highs and lows of their respective ranges, creating a unique timbral effect on top of the joining bass notes. Because the low instruments are holding the long notes while the high instruments are playing jagged, quick runs, there's a foggy sense of pulse while maintaining the sharp rhythmic theme. I think the way he approaches the layering of instruments and as a timbral tool is very similar to how Perez does it in Isolation.
There's definitely a lot of influence from Varese on Zappa's orchestral music. Since Varese was also at the beginning of electronic composition, is there anything like that with Zappa?
Don't even get me started on Zappa's electronic stuff. That's right. Zappa and Perez were both pioneers of electronic compositions. Perez with his use of early tape recording and sound engineering, and Zappa with the synclavier.
Want to hear a joke?
Not really.
What's the most popular instrument in hell? The synclavier!
Anyway, the synclavier was the first digital synthesizer, able to generate sounds and record music with up to 128 voices at the same time without the use of any tapes. Zappa was an early adopter of the synclavier, experimenting with its sounds and compositional potential as early as his 1985 piece, Aerobics in Bondage. The piece begins with a repeated rhythmic 7/8 melody, with the synclavier set to a harp-like sound. In time with the melody, various percussive sounds, claps, clicks, cymbals, gongs and rattles, toms and bass drums, pitch tempo blocks, accent different beats of the melody. After about 30 bars of 7, the tempo slows down abruptly and quickly becomes erratic, losing a sense of pulse. At the same time, sounds mimicking brass instruments layer in with piano, strings, and bass. Later in the piece, overlapping melodic lines and different meters play over each other until the end, where they merge into blocks of chords, slowly speeding up until the end with flurries of harp runs, bringing the piece to an end. As you can hear, the timing and rhythms are way too complex to coordinate between human musicians, making the piece impossible without the use of the digital synth. Zappa's decision to compose almost exclusively with digital sounds is exactly what Russolo preached. As you can see, Zappa and Varese were both early adopters of rapidly evolving technology that allowed them to explore previously impossible sounds in an unconscious homage to the ideas present in the art of noise.
These analyses clearly demonstrate the series of progressive inspiration connecting Luigi Russolo's The Art of Noises to Edgard Varese and Frank Zappa's compositional techniques and technological embrace. While revolutionary composers and musicians in their own right, it is likely that without Russolo's Futurist Manifesto, Varese and Zappa would not have experimented to the degrees they did in their compositions Ionization, Poème électronique, Naval Aviation and Art, and Aerobics in Bondage.
In the end of The Art of Noises contains several conclusions Russolo makes as to what the evolution of futurist music should look like. All 8 are applicable to the styles of Varese and Zappa, but we'll just look at the first 3. Number 1. Futurist composers should continue to enlarge and enrich the field of sound. This responds to a need of our sensibility. In fact, we notice in the talented composers of today a tendency toward the most complicated dissonances. Moving ever farther from the pure sound, they have almost attained the noise sound. This need and this tendency can be satisfied only with the addition and the substitution of noises for sounds. Number 2. Futurist musicians should substitute for the limited variety of timbres that the orchestra possesses today the infinite variety of timbres and noises, reproduced with appropriate mechanisms. Number 3. The sensibility of musicians, being freed from traditional and facile rhythms, must find in noise the means of expanding and renewing itself, given that every noise offers a union of the most diverse rhythms in addition to that which predominates.
That's an excellent point. All of those ideas are indisputably present in the music of Varese and Zappa. I had a great time talking with you today about Italian futurism and its impact on the music of a couple of 20th century experimental artists we know and love.
Anything to pass it, right?
You're not supposed to say that part. To close, a perspective from Varese that would most certainly have been shared by Luigi Russolo and Frank Zappa. I dream of instruments obedient to my thought and which, with their contribution of a whole new world of unsuspected sounds, will lend themselves to the exigencies of my inner rhythm.